Paige Johnson was just 17 years old when she was reported missing to the Covington Police Department in Kentucky on the 23rd of September. For the next 10 years, despite strong suspicions, no one knew what happened to Paige, where she had gone, or if she was still alive. This was until the 25th of March, 2020, when authorities received a call from a woman who said her husband had come across a burned human skull while steer hunting in a wooded area in Ohio. The rest of the human remains were discovered nearby and sent to the Hamilton County Coroner's Office, where they were quickly recognized as Paige Johnson using dental data. She was found only 30 miles from where she had been reported missing, and while they were obviously devastated, they were relieved to have some closure after their decade-long ordeal. After a decade of Paige being missing, the investigation was plunged into a murder inquiry, and they were on a mission to find out what happened to her. But what happened to Paige Johnson? Paige Johnson was born on September 22, 1993, to parents Donna and Gary Johnson. Paige was the middle child, with an older sister, Brittany, and younger brother, Garrett. Growing up, her parents tried hard to stay in their children's lives, but her mom worked all hours in a bar, and whilst her father was described as a great guy, he fell into drugs not long after his children were born. Hoping for some stability, Paige and her siblings were sent to live in Edgewood, Kentucky, with their grandparents. Paige was described as outgoing, outspoken, and the life of a party, lighting up any room she walked into. Paige was also very athletic throughout her childhood and into her teenage years. She was a cheerleader and a gymnast and excelled in both. Even though there was a 3-year age gap between Paige and Brittany, the pair were incredibly close. They did everything together and were pretty inseparable. When Paige had just turned 16 years old, she and Brittany both found out they were pregnant. The sisters went through both of their pregnancies together, and eventually, Paige gave birth to a healthy baby girl, which she named Mackenzie. Soon after the birth of her first child, Paige decided to drop out of Simon Kenton High School and focus on motherhood, promising she will go back and finish her education when the time was right. Paige continued to live with her family in Boone County, Kentucky, whilst raising her daughter. Paige was enjoying balancing motherhood with her flourishing social life. Her family would regularly take care of her daughters so that Paige could hang out with friends, go to parties, and all in all, be a normal teenager again. On one of those occasions, shortly after Paige turned 17, on the 23rd of September, 2020, she asked her family to look after her now 2-year-old so she could attend a small party. On the day in question, it seems Paige had asked around a couple of friends to see if they could hang out, looking for something fun to do with her day. She ended up accepting an invitation to attend a party at a friend's house. After a few hours of getting ready, Paige was dressed up and ready to go. She'd asked her sister Brittany if she wanted to go with her, but her sister declined, telling Paige she was more than welcome to stop by her home in Covington later on. Paige was picked up by a 22-year-old acquaintance of her sister, Jacob Bumpus, early that evening, and the pair planned to attend the party together. Donna was quite concerned to see her daughter hanging out with someone 5 years older than her, knowing that there would likely be alcohol at the party. Because everyone was drinking, a lot of the attendees were underage and some of them were even on drugs. There were a lot of different stories about what happened at the party, so much so that a clear timeline has never really been able to be created. There have been many rumors over the years that Paige was seen at the party, drunk and passed out. Some witnesses say that Jacob and a friend were seen leaving the party with an unconscious Paige. The next day, September 24th, 2010, Paige's family woke up and quickly realized that Paige had not returned home. Her bed had not been slept in, and they couldn't get a hold of her. Her daughter was beginning to get fussy, wondering where her mom was. The family immediately knew something was wrong. Paige loved to go out and party with her friends, but she would always let her family know where she was, especially if the plan was changing and she wasn't going to be home. Paige's family immediately began calling around to her friends to see if she was with them, or if they had heard from her in the last few hours. To no avail. When the family contacted Jacob to see if he'd seen her, he acted completely oblivious and, according to the family, just showed a complete lack of concern. Brittany filed a missing person report with the police, who jumped into action. Investigators went to Jacob's house the same day in order to quickly pinpoint Paige's last known movements. Brittany had told them that Jacob was her lift to the party and was also supposed to be taking her home. Jacob denied any knowledge of Paige's disappearance, telling authorities that he had taken her from the party, but that she had requested to be dropped off at the intersection of 15th Street and Scott Boulevard in Covington, Kentucky. When asked why he didn't take Paige home, especially if she had been drinking, he told them she had asked him to take her there so she could go see a friend. However, he wasn't able to elaborate as to who Paige was supposedly meeting, and when her cell phone records were searched, there was no indication of any such plans. During his initial interview, police described Jacob as being extremely vague about when he dropped Paige off. When pushed for what direction he saw her go in, when she got out of the car, he persistently dodged the question, saying he didn't see. Shortly after he was taken in for questioning, Jacob refused to answer any questions and requested the presence of a lawyer. Alongside Paige's phone record, police also accessed Jacob's phone. These showed that he was actually near Paige's home in Florence at that time at 1:02 a.m. At 1:32 a.m., his phone then pinged from a tower in Wilder, the one nearest to Jacob's house. Then, just before 3 a.m., his phone pinged on a tower in Edgewood. By 4:13 a.m., it pinged on a tower on Villager Road in Batavia. 5 minutes later, at 4:18 a.m., his phone pinged again on a tower on Half Acre Road, Batavia. At 9:43 a.m., the phone was back near the Wilder Tower. Police could also see that Jacob had sent a text from East Fork State Park, which is about 30 miles away from Covington, to further back up the evidence from the pings. Police also noticed that Jacob had been in constant touch with Paige up until she went missing. After that, he didn't even ask her if she was okay. It was as if he knew she wouldn't, or couldn't, reply. Intense searches began for Paige over the next few days, with over 100 searchers from police and fire departments, as well as various search and rescue teams. There were also 17 dog teams that were out there, featuring cadaver dogs and tracking dogs, all desperately looking for the missing teen. Paige's friends and family also coordinated their own searches, making ribbons to raise reward money and knocking on people's doors to make them aware in case they saw anything. They searched rivers, creeks, and dumpsters, and heard all kinds of rumors about what happened to her. Paige's mom would feature regularly on TV, begging the public for help, and also speaking to Paige directly, telling her to come home. Police also began monitoring Paige's Facebook to see if she logged in. Paige was an avid user of social media, constantly updating her status and adding images of herself and her daughter. So, to go completely off-grid, something was wrong. Police also found that there was a message left on her sister Brittany's Facebook page by Paige, which said, "Girl, I need to talk to you immediately." But by the time Brittany saw the message, it was too late. Police also found Jacob's Facebook profile and saw that he had made statuses about Paige just moments after hearing from her family about her disappearance. If anyone has seen Paige Johnson, please let me know if you have seen her. She is missing, and if you look in my photos, you will see what she looks like. Her friends and family really need to find her, and no one's heard from her. He then made a second post hours later saying, "Okay, really, if anyone has seen Paige Johnson, please let me know, because the cops are looking for her now. If anyone has any information on where she could be at, message me." According to copies of search warrant records, investigators found a substance resembling dried blood inside Jacob's home, as well as 2 latex gloves, one of which had a small drop of the same red substance, thought to be blood. The court documents further revealed that a few days after the initial search, a friend of Jacob's brother, Caleb, had told police he had seen Caleb scrubbing down his car, which the friend thought was odd, describing him as a somewhat trashy person. The friend also told police that he had heard Jacob Bumpus ask to borrow his brother's vehicle, and later noticed that something that looked like red paint had been spilled inside the trunk. However, when testing was done, it was proven that the substance was not related to Paige. Jacob had completely stopped cooperating with the investigation, and investigators were unable to find anything substantial to charge him with, other than theory and rumor. Kenton County Commonwealth's attorney, Rob Sanders, said, "I believe there are multiple people that know what happened to Paige, whether she was murdered or whether it was some other cause of her death. While there may not have been a lot of people involved in her death, they know what happened to her body. They have chosen to be uncooperative." A $35,000 reward was offered by police for any new information that could lead to Paige, but nothing of use came in at first. The investigation was making every effort to locate the missing teen, but as time went on, and with no new leads, slowly the case went cold. After Paige had been missing for a year, her mother had to make some difficult decisions, including declaring Paige legally dead. The reason Donna did this was in order to be able to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Jacob. A civil case, but one to which, in their minds, he would have to respond to. After Paige was legally declared dead, the family launched a legal case against him. When the case went to court, Jacob pled the fifth. Jacob was also asked to take a polygraph exam, which he declined. Jacob was able to decline to speak at the hearing because it was a civil lawsuit rather than a criminal one. This is something we also saw in my video on Lauren Aggie. To plead the fifth is a legal action that can be pursued in court. It means that you're exercising your Fifth Amendment right to avoid having to testify against yourself. A defendant has the right not to testify under the Fifth Amendment, and a witness in a criminal trial can plead the Fifth Amendment while testifying in response to inquiries they feel would involve them in illegal activity. Pleading the fifth is frequently seen as confirmation of guilt, and hence a damning move. If you're not guilty, what do you have to hide, goes the reasoning. The Supreme Court, on the other hand, concluded that this isn't always the case, and that even if you're innocent, unintended self-incrimination might happen during interrogation. Ultimately, the case was fruitless and just brought more pain to the family rather than answers. It would take 10 agonizing years for the family to receive some, albeit terrible, answers. The years went by, and there were no huge leads. In this case, each month the police were receiving between 1 and 3 tips, and the case remained open to the police, and Paige's family circulated flyers, never giving up hope that someone might remember something. The family hoped that as the young people at the party that night got older and had children and families of their own, their conscience might persuade them to come forward and share details they might have skipped before, but to no avail. A Facebook group was set up called What Happened to Paige Johnson, and friends, family, and web sleuths would regularly go back and forth on their own theories of what happened to the 17-year-old. During the lifetime of the group, Paige's best friend found out that Jacob had actually been going onto the page under an alias and spamming it with comments about how he was innocent and calling Paige a plethora of different names, trying to change the narrative that so many people believed. Investigators found this information very interesting when it was presented to them because it showed he was clearly still keeping track of the case, even years later. In 2020, Paige's detective updated the family, telling them there will be a case review to examine new leads and look into new technology, which has been made available since the initial investigation. This was a joint effort with both the police and the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children. The center made the recommendation to Covington police to go back and start from scratch on this case. So that's what they did. Paige's detective team reviewed nearly almost a decade of details on the case, reviewing other local and national agency procedures, and many searches conducted over the years. They said the guilty have to be lucky every single day for the rest of their lives. We only have to get lucky once. During this time, the family continued to advocate for more coverage on Paige's case. People who hadn't heard of her story before were joining groups dedicated to finding her, signing petitions, and praying for any closure that could be brought to the family. After almost 10 years since she disappeared, in March 2020, 911 received a call from a couple who were deer hunting close to East Fork Lake. The pair had come across what they believed to be human bones. A search crew was dispatched immediately, and the remains were discovered. They had to utilize dental records to authenticate the identity because the body had been nearly totally decayed. It was soon confirmed to be the remains of Paige Johnson, and her family was informed. During a press conference after her body was found, Covington Police Chief Rob Nader said, "We all wanted to find Paige alive. Today, I'm sad to say that hope evaporated entirely." Police also told the family and media that due to the advanced decay of her body, it is presumed that she died the same night she went missing, less than a mile from where Jacob's phone had pinged. After hearing the news, Donna said in a statement, "I've been waiting to bring my baby home for so long, and now I get to. This is a day that I was so worried that I'd go to my grave without ever getting," before going on to say that she was both happy and sad at the same time, but relieved they were finally able to bring Paige home and lay her to rest. Paige's family hoped that now that they had found her remains, the authorities would finally be in a position to apprehend Jacob and finally get the answers they'd been waiting over a decade for. Unfortunately, because her body had decayed so severely, they were unable to obtain sufficient irrefutable evidence or even a cause of death. While the authorities were unable to accuse Jacob of murder, they did charge him with mistreatment of a corpse and evidence tampering. Jacob was charged and pleaded not guilty in June 2020. Jacob was not a flight risk, according to the defense, and he would not harm anyone. His lawyer argued that he shouldn't be put in detention for a crime that had yet to be proven. During the proceedings, Paige's mother, Donna, held a press conference where she sobbed as she spoke about Jacob's charges. "I was filled up with so much joy when I found out he was arrested because I've known from the very first day that he knew where she was and he wouldn't cooperate with us. He put us through so much pain." Paige's sister Brittany also spoke out, saying, "I have known right from the beginning who the guilty party was in my sister's disappearance. Right now, I am in a complete state of euphoria, knowing that Jacob Bumpus has been arrested and will finally have to answer for his actions." Jacob was released from jail after posting a $50,000 bond, under the condition that Bumpus had absolutely no contact with the Johnson family. While Paige's family mourns her death and seeks justice, he is free. Although there are ideas about what happened to Paige, such as drug overdose and sexual assault, the prosecution claims that they will never be able to prove foul play. There is insufficient evidence to charge someone with homicide because the body has decayed beyond recognition. The police are certain of one thing: Paige died under Jacob's supervision, and he has done everything since to avoid facing up to what he did that night. One day, soon, there will be justice for Paige.